Welcome back, my students, to a brand new episode of Comic Class. And in today's lesson, guys, we're going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man issue 10. And yeah, this is the issue that we're introduced to the characters known as the Enforcers. And yeah, this should be really fun. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's story. Let's go. So this story starts off with a heist with a couple of criminals led by the big man called the Enforcers. And right off the bat, this issue starts out with Spider-Man trying to thwart their attempt at a heist, and he actually fails in his attempt to stop them, and they were able to outsmart Spider-Man. And the people below actually saw him, get, kind of like owned by these criminals. So Spider-Man definitely feels a little bit disappointed in himself for letting his guard down for these little criminals in his mind. And yeah, so we get to see who these criminals are. They're known as the Enforcers, and they're kind of like split up into 4 different members. We have Ox, which is like the giant strong dude. We have Montana, which is the guy with the lasso. And then we also have, I believe his name is Fancy Dan, who has like a judo black belt, and he's very fast on his feet. And we also have the leader of the gang, the big man, who wears this type of like white mask. And yeah, so Peter is at the hospital with Aunt May, and it turns out that he's gonna have to do a blood transfusion for his aunt, and he realizes that this could be bad because they might recognize that his blood might be mutated and to give away his secret identity as Spider-Man. But Flash and Liz, which really surprises Peter that Flash came to visit his Aunt May, kind of showing that he does care for Peter in a little bit. It seems like he's slowly changing as the issues go on, and eventually they will become friends. And yeah, he kind of like blows it off as Liz just, forcing him to come with her. But I'm pretty sure Flash does care about Peter, and he's starting to show more respect for Peter and his family. So that's really nice. And yeah, so Peter basically gets, made fun of by Flash, saying, why is he scared of, a big, bad needle? And eventually Peter realizes that Liz is right, that he has to do this for his Aunt May in order for her to survive. So he goes through with it, and he does the blood transfusion as the doctor does it for them. And it seems like Aunt May is gonna be okay, but she'll have to stay in the hospital, or I think she like goes off with her family to Florida or something like that. So the big man is continuing to do his reign of terror on the city, and it turns out that Betty Brant actually borrowed money, it seems, from the big man, or at least one of his groups. So the Enforcers show up, and they tell Betty that if she doesn't pay up, they're gonna do some really bad stuff to her and the people that she loves. And yeah, Peter steps in and tries to save Betty, but he can't, do anything about the situation, as he'll give off his identity as Spider-Man. So he has to play as, a very weak dude. And it's pretty crazy because Betty does say that she'll pay the money and not to hurt Peter. It shows how much she cares about him. So Peter gets into his Spider-Man costume and goes and finds the guy that pointed out Betty for the Enforcers and gets information from him on where the Enforcers are at. So Peter arrives and is surprise attacked by Montana, that uses his lasso to kind of grab Spider-Man and bring him through the window that they're at. And Spider-Man engages in a battle with all the members of the Enforcers. Ox does a really well job against Spider-Man, being super strong, and Fancy Dan is pretty fast and even surprises Spider-Man in how fast he is. But Spider-Man's reflexes are allowing him to fight against multiple opponents at once, even though it's a very hard thing to do. And he's going through like Montana's ropes and stuff, and he's landing punches on Ox. Ox even mentions that he's always wanted to land a haymaker on Spider-Man, and he just takes a beating because he's fighting 3-on-1, and the big man I guess gets away or something like that, and Peter I guess cuts out the lights, or the big man cuts out the lights, and Peter makes his escape, kind of like reeling from his battle. But he does check in on Betty, trying to figure out why she's keeping this a secret from him, and it seems like this is driving a wedge in their relationship, so we'll see how that plays out later. Eventually, Peter realizes that J. Jonah Jameson, I guess, was talking to the Bidman, or at least his group, or groups that were associated with them. So he actually arrives at their base, it seems, and he takes all their goons on, and eventually gets in a battle with the Bidman himself, trying not to get, killed. And he fights Fancy Dan, he fights Ox, and he fights, all the enforcers, Montana as well. And eventually, the Bidman says that he's not like Spider-Man and that he will not play by his rules, he won't fight by his rules, that he knows when to make an exit. So he actually escapes. Now, Peter goes to the Daily Bugle and sees J. Jonah Jameson talking to one of the guys that I guess works for him. And it turns out that a police officer shows up, and Peter thinks that J. Jonah Jameson might actually be the Bidman himself, kind of showing a little bit of a bias that he really wants J. Jonah Jameson to be the Bidman. That way he doesn't have to deal with his rhetoric anymore. But it turns out that, it wasn't, J. Jonah Jameson, that it was actually Foswell. And Foswell comes clean and says that, it's true that the police did find his outfit and his mask, I guess. And it turns out that he used, modified shoes to make himself look bigger, as well as his coat to make him look bigger. And he was like the perfect disguise. And he almost got away with it, except, he has some really crummy luck. And at the end, Spider-Man has to admit that he was kind of biased and they shouldn't have, thought that it was J. Jonah Jameson without any, facts or even evidence at all. And J. Jonah Jameson wants Foswell to say that Spider-Man was in cahoots with him, but Foswell just says that, I'll worry about it all the way to jail. And yeah, the issue ends with Peter, and JJ basically both learning a lesson, and with JJ learning as well that you should have evidence before you start making all these accusations, because it's hurting his reputation, and the newspaper of the Daily Bugle. So he's dealing with that, and he's learning that lesson. And while that's happening, Peter arrives and checks his mail, I guess, and realizes that Betty Brant hasn't, actually sent him any type of letter saying where she's at. And he's afraid that she doesn't, care about him. And remember, this is Peter's first relationship, it seems, in high school. And he's not a full-on adult yet, so he's really taking this hard, thinking that, she really just, ghosted him, basically. But we get to see what's happening with Betty Brant, that she's actually very heartbroken that she's not able to tell Peter what's going on. She just wishes that there's a way she can get Spider-Man's aid. So I'm guessing this will all come together in the next few issues. So we'll keep a lookout on this plot line. And that was the end of the issue, asking us the question, will Betty Brant find out the secret identity of Spider-Man? And what is the strange secret of Betty Brant? Which I think will be pretty interesting to talk about when we get it in the next few issues, as it looks like that's what's going to be happening. And that was the Amazing Spider-Man issue 10, the introduction of the Enforcers. What a great issue, guys. I will say this one was a lot weaker than a lot of the ones we covered recently. But overall, the Enforcers are a really cool group of villains, and I do think there's more you could do with these type of characters, and we will see them utilized more in a future issue, which is considered, like a fan favorite in the Steve Ditko Stan Lee run, concerning the Green Goblin and them teaming up. And, and I believe we see the Hulk as well, so that's going to be really cool to talk about when we get to it. But that's going to be all, guys. If you're new to the channel, subscribe for more comic book reviews. I'm doing multiple different retrospectives coming in the future, and I'm trying to get some daily content out every day, and we'll see how long this goes for. I'm trying to do my best to grow this channel, trying to reach my first 100 subs. So if you have any way to help, such as liking the video, comment down below, and sharing it on social media, be sure to do so. But until next video, guys, God bless you, and until the next lesson, keep on reading those comments.